he was an Amorite, not an Ammonite.
Because they wiped out the Amorites.
They wiped out the Amorites, but not the Ammonites. Ammon and Moab were descendants of Lot by his 2 daughters. And of course Esau then was the brother of Jacob. Okay, ready? Running? Okay, so we have then, first of all, you've got if he misses anything. But a false prophet could be 100% accurate. But the second thing is, if he teaches Israel to sin against God. Basically, the second trait of a false prophet is that they would lead the people astray. So a false prophet could be 100% accurate, but if he leads the people astray, that makes him a false prophet. And that's the category that Balaam lands in. His prophecies were 100% accurate, but he told the king of Moab how to lead Israel astray. Have an orgy, invite them to your service, and invite them to an orgy and a feast, and they'll sin, and then God will destroy them. So that's the key with a false prophet. So even though he's accurate, that doesn't make him a true prophet of God. Even though he spoke in God's name, doesn't make him a true prophet of God. See, those are the things.
3?
Actually, it's 2. I was thinking the third one is he can be. He's either makes mistakes or he can be 100% accurate, but ultimately he leads people astray. And of course, they were to kill false prophets. How did God deal with Balaam? Well, he was going to kill him on the way there, right? So his donkey saved his life and chewed him out.
He ruined his reputation.
Yeah, that's right. Well, actually, he didn't ruin his reputation. You know what happened to Balaam in the end? He hung out to see what would happen, and he got killed by the Israelites.
Cut down by the sword.
Yep, got cut down by the sword. He didn't get out of the way in time. So God took care of him. Now, he tries to curse them. Balak tries to get it, but he can't because God won't let him. And it's an important thing in the developments. Again, when you're looking at this narrative literature, you're asking the question, where is God in all this? Well, where was God? God was protecting Israel. And God said, look, I have chosen to bless Israel. No one can curse them because they're under my protection. The covenant's in full force here. And so God takes him and uses him to bless them. In fact, has a messianic prophecy about the star rising. And he prophesies the destruction of Assyria. That's centuries away. And so, I mean, he has great prophetic insight that God does that. Now, when Moab invites them in, it does lead to God's discipline. And thousands of Israelites are killed by God because they're having this orgy with these Moabite women. Now, Phinehas, one of the grandsons of Aaron now, Phinehas comes along. No, not grandson. It's his younger son. Comes along and kills an Israelite who's sleeping with a Midianite princess. The Midianites, by the way, are cousins. They are children. They're descendants of Keturah, Abraham's second wife. Now, when they go to war with the Midianites later on, they don't kill all the Midianites, but they kill this Midianite group. Because Moses' father-in-law is a Midianite. Some of the Midianites are worshipers of God, but not all. So now, chapter 26, we have the new census. What do you observe about that? I don't know if you've ever done a chart and compared the two censuses. Yeah, there's a few less. Not quite as many survived. And they really have basically what? They basically just maintained themselves. You know, it's a change of a few thousand. But when you compare tribes, some tribes gain quite a bit. But the tribe of Simeon pretty well wiped themselves out. makes you wonder if they weren't some of the big leaders amongst the rebels, and they kept getting themselves wiped out too soon to have kids. Because they have a significant decline in their numbers. And of course, they're later on then absorbed by the tribe of Judah. But they do a census, they count heads, and what do they find? Nobody's left except Joshua and Caleb from the original group. They have all died. So now they can enter into the promised land. Now, we have this interesting set of chapters because coming into this book ends then with some instruction. And you have the question of the land inheritance and the daughters of Zelophehad. Now, what's the problem that they face?
Their dad has no sons.
Their dad has no sons. He's got 5 daughters. And everyone's going to get land distributed, but dad has died, and they're saying it's not fair. If he'd have had sons, or even just one son, he'd get land. And it's not fair. Now, why didn't women inherit land?
Because they could be married off to many other people.
That's right. That's right. Whoever you married as a woman, you supported that family. You became loyal to that family. You produced sons for that family. That's why you had, she would bring her dowry with her and things like that, and they would pay a dowry for her because, you know, she has now switched her loyalty to her new family. And anything she brings with her, her new family keeps because she is contributing to its strength. So these guys look at this situation and they go, you know, they come and say, if these women get to inherit land and they marry somebody from a different tribe, our tribe will lose its land. And that's why the thing was made then, said they could only marry within the tribe. So it kept it within the family unit. And then, of course, you had the men standing in line because, hey, they're worth a bunch of land. Ooh, land was wealth. And so you had this. But here's a significant thing. God did something. This was very countercultural. In their world, women didn't have rights like this. And what God said is, women do have rights. And this is very countercultural. And he said, if a man doesn't have any sons, then his daughters can inherit. It would not be fair to pass it on to his brother or his cousin or somebody else. The daughters should have it. Because again, why? Because then that makes them valuable for marriage. If a man had all daughters and people knew that, you know, when he dies, his daughters don't get anything, his daughters have no value. And so it gave them worth, but it also acknowledged their rights. And God said women do have rights. And they need to be treated with that kind of respect. And so,
what value would they have if he had had one son? I mean, they have value when they...
yeah, they would have less value other than then it would be more challenging to marry off. But his own family wouldn't be sitting back. Because in their time, it's your relatives who often would marry your daughters. You married within cousins and things like that. So if they're sitting there saying, you know, if I don't marry my cousin, I get all her land, I get more land. See, then that's where the challenge comes. And but also it acknowledged that this man had a right to continue on through his daughters. And this man who would have gotten the land had a right for his daughters to benefit from that and not to be dependent on somebody else.
Does this judgment change a law that was given before, or is it?
It changed the practice.
Okay, but it wasn't something that was specified beforehand in the
No.
law that sons got it. It was just something that they did culturally.
Right.
And then this comes. Okay.
Right.
I found it kind of interesting that here in chapter 27, they were just given the ability to have land after the father passed away with no sons. But until chapter 36, they weren't actually commanded to
That's right.
have to marry within the family
Right.
in order to keep the land.
That's right. In chapter 36, the guys figured it out. Hey, wait. And God clarified it. And isn't it interesting how God fixed these things as they went along? And so it does that. Now, chapter 28 and 29, you have all these different sacrifices for Sabbath, new moon, Passover, first fruits, Feast of Trumpets, Day of Atonement, Feast of Booths. So he gives a series of instructions about these. And one of the things that stands out is when you look at it, basically what you end up having. And again, this shows the expense of the sacrificial system. Every day you have your daily sacrifices, morning and evening. And then on Sabbath, you have your daily sacrifice and your Sabbath sacrifice. On the new moon, you have your daily sacrifice and your new moon sacrifice. Well, what happens if the new moon happens on Sabbath? Well, then you have your daily sacrifice, your Sabbath sacrifice, your new moon sacrifice. You know, when the feast time comes, you have your daily sacrifice, you have the feast sacrifice. Well, if it happens to occur at a new moon, you have, I mean, it gets very expensive. And this was this is why people needed to give. This is why they had to have this constant flow of livestock being brought to the Lord to meet all these needs. Worshipping God was a very expensive proposition in their world.
Amazing how God provided for all of it, though.
Yeah, but He provided. He had the cattle on 1,000 hills. And in fact, what later prophecy said, I'm tired of your sacrifices. You know, all I want is obedience. Give me obedience. You know, obedience first, then sacrifices. And they don't please me.
So the sacrifices for the community, like the daily sacrifice, came from whom?
I believe they came from the priests and from the tithes that had come up through the system. And
Okay,
those-
but when would a live animal be given as a tithe? The firstborn?
yeah, as a tithe, yeah.
Firstborn is given
Yeah.
and kept alive?
No, the firstborn is sacrificed each year at whatever time. Actually, no, it was every third year. Every third year, a shepherd was to tithe from his flock. And so at whatever given time that was, they would run them through,
Okay.
count them off, and he'd turn them in. And they'd take it to the Levitical city and deliver it to the Levites.
Mhm.
And then the Levites were to distribute it amongst the poor as well as themselves. And so that's how it came through the
So
system.
some of the Levites had herds and were shepherds as well,
Yeah,
took care of their flocks,
yeah,
let them grow.
right. They just didn't have the territory to run them
Right.
around loose. They just had to keep them in dens and all that kind of stuff.
Mm.
Now, chapter 30, we have laws concerning vows. And the bottom line was, a man must keep his vow. Why is it then that wives and daughters could be exempted by their husbands and fathers? Because it says, if the husband or the father hears of this vow, he has the right, when he hears about it, to annul it. Say, nope, cancel that. Why?
Reaffirming the headship of the man of
That's
the
right.
house.
It's a leadership structure. And wives were under their husband's authority, daughters were under the father's authority, and they couldn't do it. Now, a son could, but the women couldn't. But here's an interesting thing that people often miss. A little statement in there. And if the husband or the father cancels out the wife or daughter's vow, God then holds him accountable. It wasn't something he just said, doesn't count. No, he still had to make it good somehow, or pay a sacrifice or something for it not being done. It didn't make it disappear. She just was not any longer held accountable for it. But if she was a widow, or he didn't say anything, then it stuck.
Is that for all of them, or just the ones where it says that if he hears about them and then waits to say anything about them, then he's guilty, but it doesn't specify that on any of the ones that are nullified as soon as he hears about them?
Oh, I thought it did, yeah.
Maybe
Yeah,
it did.
it counts for all of them. Any of them that he nullifies, he would be held accountable for. Now, I may have misunderstood that. Let me double check.
Verse 15, I guess, is what I was looking at.
Yeah.
Dealing with specifically on the day. On verse 7,
Yeah.
the husband.
Yeah, on 7 is the day when he hears, and there's no response, then it sticks. Yeah, the 15 says, but if he does make them void after he has heard them, not after delaying, but after he hears. When he hears, if he makes it void, then he shall bear her guilt. Yeah, so I see that as anyone that he voids after he hears about it. If he doesn't hear about it, he can't void it. Therefore, she's obligated.
Okay, it's just my translation.
Oh, okay, yeah. So different translations translate it a different way. And that could be, yeah. But he's still, that's in, why? Because you don't take the name of the Lord in vain. And here's the point too. She wouldn't make that vow if she didn't want to do it. So he's denying her the opportunity to fulfill her promise to God. So God holds him accountable for denying her the opportunity to fulfill her vow. See? So it still matters. And again, it shows the importance that she has in God's eyes and the significance. She's not, granted, she's under the authority of her husband or father, but she's not, how would I say it? In other words, she's still a spiritual entity that God recognizes as an individual who has rights and obligations and those kinds of things. She is significant, and what she says is significant. And if she gets counteracted, it's still significant. Again, shows you God's view of women, that they weren't like the Muslim world, just cattle. They were real people with real wills that did things that were significant. Now, we come from this to these latter chapters. You have the avenging on the Midianites, chapter 31, in which no Israelite soldier died. Do you understand the significance of that? I mean, this is in hand-to-hand combat warfare where people just simply tripped and killed themselves in battle. And so it's very amazing. Then we follow that with after God has delivered them this way, and again, they add up the amount of tribute and stuff, and the numbers only work if you take them literally. They distribute the land, they take care of those things, and then we have these closing instructions. Again, in chapter 33, they're to exterminate the Canaanites. Why? If they don't, they'll become a snare, and Israel will end up being judged by God. They're to exterminate them. He describes the borders of the land, tells them what to do. He gives the Levites cities, and they're going to designate 6 of them as cities of refuge. And again, we close with the daughters having to marry within the tribe. All the little nuts and bolts are put together here before they enter into the promised land, so things will be done neatly and in order. And people will be properly taken care of.
Do we know where all the cities are today? I mean, I found a map of the cities of refuge, but
Yeah.
I haven't found anything outlining the 48.
Oh, no, I don't know that they know where all 48 are. I think they know where some of them are.
And some have argued that it's east clear in the modern day Iraq and Iran.
Yeah, they don't go quite that far. But now, the territory that was promised did go all the way to the Euphrates.
Right, yeah.
So
So
they
it would be at least modern day
Yeah,
Iraq to
that's right, yeah.
Baghdad.
Yeah,
And then Kadesh Barnea, the Sinai should be part of the land.
yeah.
So we're not talking about the little 140 mile,
No,
140
no, there was more territory that would get there. And in fact, we're told that when Jesus comes back after the day of the Lord, they're going to occupy modern day Jordan.
Right.
They're going to occupy Moab and Edom along with Philistia and up to Sidon, which would be about halfway up through Lebanon. Yeah, they're going to occupy a lot more territory than they have now. You know what's going to happen to the Arabs who live in those territories?
It depends on their faith.
Depends on their faith. The believers will be absorbed into the tribes of Israel. They will not be displaced from their land. And Ezekiel is promised that those who believe amongst the enemies, I guess you'd say, instead of being displaced, they will simply be absorbed into whatever tribe inherits that territory. They will not be displaced.
Well, doesn't Isaiah even make something like that
Yeah.
for the Egyptians, that there's a
Yeah.
plan for them?
That
to
there's a plan
remnant?
for the Egyptians to be included in. Yeah. So again, God does things justly. They will receive justice. And so that's one of the most important things with God is justice. I mean, He's going to judge the world justly. And that determines heaven and hell. And the only reason we get heaven is because Christ took our punishment for us.
Amen.
The just for the unjust. Well, that finishes Numbers. And we're ready to look at Deuteronomy, the law. Any other questions? Good, it's a good discussion tonight. Good questions. And so we'll see more then next time. And have a good week.